Hi, this is Heather Noël from the GivingGameFoundation.com, and I'm here today with Bradley Logan, and I'm going to let Bradley introduce himself.
Heather, thank you.
My pleasure.
So to try and describe myself, I typically start by saying that I'm all about unconditional love. And I'm trying to express that in every format, in every way possible. And I've got a bunch of tools in my bag of tricks that help me do that. Like I'm a professional license collector, so I've got a yoga license to teach yoga. I've had a contractor's license. I've had a mortgage broker's license. I've had a real estate license, broker's license, a law license, which is the one that most people seem to get most excited about. But what I've found is that these licenses are handcuffs that keep professionals, supposedly the highest paid and the most trained in a profession, they keep them handcuffed to a system that pervades everything that we do. And like, when I say handcuffed to me, like, I'll take the most obvious example from my perspective, which would be a medical doctor who was told that they're going to uphold your health at the highest level, and they go to the most extensive schooling to learn how to do that, and they come out only knowing how to prescribe poison and keep you programmed, keep your mind numb. And it's not about healthcare at all, and it's all tied to that license. And those licenses are just documented words that have people follow a program and think that that's the standard that they have to follow. And then I realized that same thing was happening in the legal world. It took me longer to see it. It was obvious as it relates to like food and insurance and pharmaceutical companies, and how all these contracts keep people stuck using these licenses to do what they're doing, and the lawyers are the ones who write those licenses and have woven the whole program together. And I didn't realize that when I was practicing law, and the average lawyer doesn't know that. I mean, they're just like the average doctor doesn't know that they're prescribing poison. Mm-hmm. I mean, maybe I think some of them are starting to wake up now, but it's a hard program to break out of. Mm-hmm. And it's been the same thing in the legal realm and the judges, right? It's not about finding the truth or giving mercy or finding justice.
Right?
Yeah. It's not about any of that.
Mm-hmm.
It's about following the rules of the license. I call it chess. It's like playing chess, where all they do is you figure out that rule that the other guy doesn't know, and you get him trumped, or you get him in checkmate.
Right.
But it has nothing to do with finding justice, and it's just sad. And so there's the division of our court system from equity, from civil law, which is the rules of the chess game. But there's another division which is called equity, and that's about fairness. Mm-hmm. And that's where this whole idea of seeing your standing in another way in our system, because you align with the divine, with your creator, with your source, and as long as you do no harm to your neighbor, then you don't have to follow anybody else's jurisdiction or their rules. I mean, it's your game, as I know, that pun intended.
Right.
Right, but you're making the rules.
Yeah.
And as long as you're not harming your neighbor, you can make whatever rules that you want. And I mean, that's going to come from a place of love. I mean, that's what loving, you love your creator, and that's through love, that the rest of it all falls into place, right? All the other laws that we have to follow are summed up in those two: love God and love your neighbor as yourself.
So how do you pull this off in an actual court of law if you are trying to defend yourself, or for people who maybe are wanting to, like get some help from the court system for something that's been done unfairly to them.
Well, so it's kind of convoluted, but basically when somebody understands their sovereign connection and their divine right, and they just stop listening to other people trying to tell them what to do, these things kind of come together. And there's no real recipe necessarily on how it happens. It's just when you realize that you have the power inside of you to take care of you. I call it the 7-foot bubble theory, right? It used to be 6 foot, but the COVID thing kind of screwed that up. So I expanded out past that now to 7 foot, right? And if all I focus on is love, unconditional love to myself and for myself and my heart and the 7 feet around it, everything else takes care of itself, right? Like, I don't need other people's input, and other people don't need my input if they're doing the same thing. And so if we all collectively stand in that space, you start to realize that when you're approaching other people in any circumstances, be it a court or be it with a police officer who pulls you over on the side of the road, or that clerk in the grocery store who's telling you that you have to put a mask on in order to buy something in the store, if you stay within your 7-foot bubble and you radiate this unconditional love, all those problems are going to dissipate. And so how that looks in every circumstance is different. I mean, everybody's story is different, you know, like, but that's, and so you go into court, I would recommend people not go into court, frankly, because it's a den of thieves. And I don't know why you would want to go play in there, but
right.
But that is what a lot of people do. That's a big part of the game in our society, is to play the game of suing each other.
Right. Well, and you know, one thing I didn't know until just a few months ago is that the court system is a for-profit thing, right? It's for profit.
You mean the court system that runs the courts, the entity that runs the courts, houses, and all of that.
Yeah,
is that what you're talking about? Yeah,
like the judges and all that. Yeah. That's all like a for-profit.
Yeah, we pay like all these little fees every time you have to register.
Right.
There's all kinds of stories about what happens to that money and how much money it is. But I mean, it's a lot of money.
I bet it is.
Right, and it's not a system like I'm this close to giving up my law license. Like, I don't know if I want to like go out on a big infraction, like try and play at the court with the judge and then have him ban me, or just relinquish it. But it's such a joke. It's such a joke that they force you to use lawyers in order to bring these suits.
Right.
And then people feel like, that all the attorneys make all the money. Mm-hmm. There's never a winner at the bottom at the end of the day.
Except the attorneys.
Except for the attorneys, right? Who made these stupid rules, who said you have to have an attorney to come into court.
And is that true?
Well, we went to court 2 days ago with the neighbor and my dear friend and co-trustee, Morgan Langan, and to represent him in a trust case for his sovereign land. And they wouldn't let me in because I wouldn't put a mask on, and they wouldn't let him represent himself because he hired me as an attorney.
But if he hadn't hired you, then he could have represented himself? He had been
representing himself for the last year and a half. Or no, longer than that, like 6 years when I first met him, when I first got involved, and then I went away. But yeah, he's been representing himself for years, and he's been in like every court in the land. And it's crazy. But then and they didn't like it because he didn't have an attorney. And then he hired me, and now they won't talk to him.
Because you wouldn't wear a mask and they wouldn't let you in.
Well, they say that he has to be represented by me now that he's hired me. And all I was going to do is go into the court and say, Your Honor, my client, Trustee Langan, is a completely capable and adept student of the law and knows it better than most attorneys I know. And I would like to hand the microphone over to him to represent himself in this case.
Wow.
That's what I was going to say, but he wasn't. Anyway, I didn't even get to speak. And Morgan tried to do it, and they wouldn't let him do it. But it worked to our advantage, as I told you. So.
Right.
But it's again, it's not about, the judge cares not at all about justice.
Right.
Or like even looking at the issues.
It's all the game. isn't it?
He's the county, Yavapai County, is represented by a firm who represents municipalities. So they know how the game plays. They know how to work with the judges.
Sure.
The deal's. They
and they
know the
who
deal's.
plays golf with who, right?
Yeah, the deal's done
Right.
before we even enter the courtroom.
Right.
And they know it.
Yeah.
And so that's why. And so.
So what about small claims court? Is it the same kind of thing, or is it a little more relaxed or something?
See, it all depends. It just depends upon the people, right? I mean, they all play the game at a different level. Some of them know all the behind-the-scenes dark stuff, and some of them don't. I mean, they just get up every day and do their job and think that they're serving justice in some way by upholding these civil rules, and their program is running.
Yeah.
Is how I see it, right?
Yeah.
And they just haven't unlocked it. They haven't looked at it, and
maybe they have and they prefer it.
Yeah.
The way they're doing it.
Well,
right?
yeah. I meet doctors, right, who realized the program that they've been running in, medical doctors, and that plants that God grew on the earth for us to enjoy and to be real medicine are considered poison in their practice, and they're not allowed to talk about them or they'll lose their license, right? And then it's like some of them, like, they won't, even though they realize the benefits of these plants and that they're not harmful, and I mean, they just won't break out of what they're doing, and they just keep living their life that way.
They want to keep their license.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's others that want to, kind of like what I'm doing. I use my law license in the time being, and I do things without it as well. But, like, I can go write contracts and be a consultant, and all you have to have is some form of, well, as a consultant, you really don't need much of anything. I mean, it's language. It's just playing the game with different terms.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And you can consult on anything and charge the same fee you can do with a license.
So the question I have is, there are people who, for instance, are talking about taking stores to court that wouldn't let them in with a mask, or without a mask, right? And so, what are your thoughts about that? Like, I'm hearing people talk about, well, you need to stand up and so on and so forth. So, what are your thoughts about that? Is it worth it, considering that the system is so skewed and all that?
Well, I went through like a cycle, because it's been what we've been dealing with this now since the COVID thing, right? Which is and again, it's not about the mask, right? It has nothing to do with the mask. It's about these programs that are the virus that's running in people's minds, that they listen to nonsense and accept it and just go along with it, and they don't resist. And so I thought it's my obligation to stand up for this modern day discrimination of, like, people who are discriminated against because you don't wear a mask.
Right.
Like, it's just nonsense. I've felt more discriminated in this last year and a half of my life being a man of color than I ever did because of my skin color before.
Right.
I mean, like, I go in a store.
Because you didn't wear a mask.
Yeah, that's what the discrimination is.
Right?
I mean, it's ridiculous.
I know.
I mean, like, I really felt ostracized, just like people, like, stare at you with evil eyes.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is not right. Like, I feel like I got to stand up against this.
Right.
I can't just not say anything. Like, Martin Luther King didn't deal with his discrimination that way. Right? And I don't know, is it resistance or is it an act of love? I mean, I'm still trying to find that magic spot. And I started being very resistant. Like, my daughter and I would go to places and, film each other, like, having confrontations with the, and I wanted to teach all the clerks.
Yeah.
And then it's like, I'm still casting judgment on them. I'm still, like, they're stuck in a program, and what I'm doing is not going to help them break out of it.
Right.
And I just decided to kind of move my energy away from, we had lawsuits lined up against Sprouts, natural grocers, these like medical offices that wouldn't let their kids. An orthodontist wouldn't let kids in the front lobby without putting a mask on before he get in the chair to take his mask off and let the dentist dig in his mouth the whole time, right?
Crazy.
I mean the craziest things.
Yeah.
And so it's like, do you want to spend the energy in that legal system battling it out? The lawyers are the lawyers are going to love it. They were locked down. I'm sure they got all kinds of cases and strategies going from both sides. Mm-hmm. And there'll be millions and millions of dollars of lawsuits, one on both sides. And
so
it'll go on
forever
and ever.
Did you ever go after anybody or no?
Well, I mean, I would like contact people and start working settlement, because that's what all lawsuits do anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, only 1% of them ever get tried.
Sure.
It's all driven by the insurance companies. This is the other reason like to not do it, right? I mean, insurance is what drives all this. They drive the medical,
yep.
They drive the pharmaceutical, and they drive the lawsuits. Nobody sues if the other side doesn't have insurance, because there's nothing, they're not going to win anything. I mean, of substantial. Attorneys don't go after claims if it's just a person's individual assets. They want big money. And so...
Yeah. Can I throw in one thing about the insurance?
Yeah.
So we had an interesting, encounter, I guess you could say, at a little market across the street from where we live. And it was really interesting because the mask mandate had been lifted, but they were still requiring their employees to wear masks. And
which makes it
that came
company
from
policy.
the insurance, but the company policy came from the insurance company.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my gosh. So it's not really like the store itself had a choice, because the insurance company was forcing it. And that's really amazing. And that's kind of where, Amelia and I actually got kicked out because she had a friend and he didn't want to wear a mask anymore. We were trying to give him a little support, and oh my gosh, the guy who was the head of the, I don't know what he's called, not the CEO,
manager?
but the manager. Yeah, the manager. He was so mad at me because I just said to this guy, I said, you don't have to go in his office and let him yell at you. You can just say, I'm not wearing a mask, and he can send you away. But you don't have to go in, because this guy was just ready to let him have it, Yeah. And I'm like, you don't have to do that.
Some of those people,
I know.
It's so emboldening.
And the manager, so I was just videoing so that we'd have some, evidence.
Yeah.
And this guy kicked Amelia and I out of the store. He's like, you can never come back. This is a private company. And I said, no, it's not. It's a place of public accommodation.
Absolutely.
And
they're open to the public.
That's right. And so it's not private. And a lot of people don't know that. So then we go and we sit up front of the store, and Amelia and I and her friend, and this cop comes in. Same story. I said, no, this is a place of public accommodation. Oh, no, it's not. And I'm like, wow. It's just like, so anyhow, but I went to
They're
the
programmed.
same, right?
They just don't know.
I know.
And that's what, so the whole, the sovereignty issue is like you knowing what rights you really have, and then being able to express it,
right,
and stay calm,
right,
and breathe deep, and which is where I struggle, because I get.
Oh, I'm good at that part. I just don't know what to say.
I start getting excited sometimes, and I want to like get kind of like like teach them something, as opposed to just staying in my sovereignty. And because they can't penetrate that.
So this cop says to us, well, you can never come back here again.
That's crazy talk.
I know. So what happens if we go back anyhow? Do they just come and arrest us? Because the guy wanted to arrest us. This is what's really interesting, because he told us we had to leave, and I said, well, I just want to be clear. Why is her friend being asked to leave? And now here was what was fascinating. You think that they would either fire him or something. You're fired, or what?
Yeah.
But to get out of doing that, because then he could get unemployment.
Right.
This is what the sheriff said. He said he is what did they call it? I'm trying to think. It's
suspended.
Suspended.
Yeah.
Yes, and he said suspended indefinitely. So I'm not firing you, so you can't get unemployment, and I'm still going to get to be right.
Yeah.
And so
That's
was
chess. He's
right?
playing chess.
Playing chess.
With the stupid
and that was the
rules.
manager who said that. So this guy ends up like totally going back, anyhow, putting the mask back on. But Amelia and I are the ones who can't go in the store anymore. So, but the funny thing was, he said, he told us, okay, so here's the thing, and I said, yeah, I just wanted to get this on video so that we have this, and in case we need it. And so we stood up to leave, and he goes, no, go ahead and sit down. And I said, no, you asked us to leave. So we're going to leave now. So I start walking away, and Amelia's friend starts walking away, but she kind of lingers and listens to him, and he pulls that little microphone up, the little walkie-talkie up, and he's like, stand down. So he was waiting. He just wanted the excitement of arresting us.
They feel like they're so empowered,
right?
With all that stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh.
So given that, what would be your advice to anyone who's been kicked out or whatever?
Well,
what would be your thoughts?
It goes two ways, right? Like I used to say, well, take your money to place it, wants it. Like stop resisting that nonsense.
I'm good with that too.
But sometimes you want something from a place where you might have had that issue anyway, or it's more convenient, or whatever.
Yeah.
Like you just want to go back to a place that you want to go back to.
Right.
And then it's just how much energy do you want to put,
Right.
We're playing the game.
Yeah.
And then how do you play the game with that?
Right.
And for me, like in your scenario, I would maybe go in the store, get what I want, and then, in fact, this is what I did the last time at Natural Grocers. They tried to kick me out. I just started gathering my stuff up, and they're following me around. There's like 3 or 4 of them. They're trying to run me out. And I'm like, you know what, you guys, you have just assaulted me. Like, you feel like there's this imminent threat.
Right.
And so now they can't call trespass on me, right? And I'm in a position of control over the situation. And I have a little piece of paper that says all that on it, and you can give it to them. And it says, if you don't back away now, I'm going to call the police and file the assault.
But what if this is turned around where they go, hey, the police have already told you you're not allowed here, even though it's illegal for them to do that?
So then you're building, so you would have a camera there and you'd film all this, and then I would just walk it through for the insurance company, because that's your audience. He's going to settle out this discrimination claim. It works doubly good for me, but it still works for you, But I'd be like, why are you discriminating against me? Right? And I would ask them to answer the question.
Yeah.
And then listen to whatever it is that they're going to say.
Yeah.
And they can't say it's the mandate. It's got to be corporate policy.
Right, and it had nothing to do with masks. It was just that I was supporting this guy at not wearing a mask. I said, I was just disagreeing with the manager, but very calmly and quietly. And I was like, he doesn't have to go to your office. It's not obligated to do that. And he was so mad.
And he's open to the public.
That's right.
So he has no right to have called you out and discriminated against you, which is what he's done in some capacity. He's discriminated.
Yeah.
I don't even know what it is necessarily yet.
I don't either.
And so you got to get him to confess that. But at some point he's going to have to say there's a reason why.
Yeah. Because the sheriff never told us why we weren't allowed, just this guy who worked there. And
discrimination cases are significant. And you can take those to the government and they'll handle them without you having to pay for the legal fees. You know what I mean?
Really?
Like there's organizations that take discrimination cases.
Oh,
now,
I like that.
I don't exactly, you got to find the right one in the right office that is aligned with your cause. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's all plain, it's all game, but I mean, there's all these different ways to play the game,
right? So,
if
so
people
what are
want
your
to.
thoughts in terms of, is it worth it for people to try to, because we were talking about, I think, is it called natural law? So we have legal, and then we have law that's like God's law kind of thing.
Like common law, natural law.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So can you even go to court with that backing you up, or?
Well, you can. That's how you stand there, and you stand on those things. It's again, though, it's just a move in the chess game. It doesn't mean that the judge is going to necessarily follow your rules. It all depends. There are a lot of judges that know, and they kind of, do they know, or is it just the nature of the game where people who are standing in that divine power get by? I'm not sure. You know what I mean? It's a combination of all that stuff is going on.
And do you feel like you have to, like, so for instance, if I wanted to get the right to go back and shop there if I choose to, so it's my choice at least, would I need to actually bring in a physical number so that they would settle with me, or do you just stand there and go, I just want to be able to go shop?
I wouldn't even talk to them. I just go back into the store and see what happens.
Okay.
I would just like, and then be ready, dance on your feet,
Right.
be led by your
Right.
divine source, and see how it
Sure.
goes. And
Yeah.
be, above all,
Listen to them.
they're like, that's it.
That's it. We love it.
Above all, exhibit love.
Yeah.
It's a great opportunity to go in and love on all those
Yeah.
programmed people that are like running programs that we don't
Yeah.
get. Then we wish we could help them break out of, but
Yeah.
until they're ready, they're not gonna.
That's right.
And so we just go stand in your own divine power, knowing that you're not harming anybody, you're not doing anything wrong,
Right.
even though they make you feel like it sometimes.
Right.
But you're not trespassing by going in your local Clark store to buy
That's right.
some groceries.
Exactly.
I mean, come on.
Right.
I don't care what they say. That's not a harm to your neighbor. You can
Right.
go in there and buy damn groceries if you want.
Right. Exactly.
And just do it. And don't
Okay.
worry about how it's going to take care of itself. I bet you nobody will say anything. I bet you it'll go flawless, and you'll be like,
I got my bananas after all. I'm so excited.
that's how it's going to go.
Okay.
That's how it's going to go.
I will try that because that sounds like fun. And even if they, because I was going to go to the sheriff and say, by the way, you never told me why we're not allowed in here other than it's private property, which it's not.
Right,
So,
right.
yeah, okay.
And it doesn't even matter what they say. I mean, they're see, all these things are corrupt.
Yeah,
The sheriff's department's corrupt.
yeah,
I mean, like, you're sometimes going to get some good guys, sometimes you're going to get some nutty guys.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's like, I have nobody to report to except for my divine creator. I'm
Right.
not under their jurisdiction. I don't need to go get their permission. I don't need to go talk to them. I don't need to go explain things to them. If they pull me over on the side of the road, I don't need to talk to them. Did I hurt a neighbor? Did I have nothing to say?
So if they called the sheriff, just if,
Yep.
then what would you say if they showed up and said, you're not allowed in here, we already told you you're not allowed in here?
I would say I want a basis for this discrimination.
Okay.
I'm being discriminated against. That's what I'm feeling, and that's what's happening, and I want to know why. And I'd have my camera rolling.
Right?
Yeah.
Interesting.
And what are they going to say to that?
I don't know.
That's what's going on.
And what if they just because they can, what if they arrested me?
Then you got to deal with that. I mean, you got to be prepared for that to happen, right? I mean,
Okay.
I don't know. Like, what? For what? Like, for trespassing, I
Yeah,
guess,
it would be
right?
trespassing because that's what he said. You're trespassing. If you even come in this parking lot and you're not, right here, like you can be over here with these other companies, but you can't be right here. I'm just like, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
So it's trespassing, but
Yeah.
they're illegally calling it trespassing.
Right.
Then do you go to court over that?
Yeah, and you fight with the insurance company, and you settle a claim at some point. That's how.
But
that's-
but wouldn't they be trying
But-
to charge me money as opposed to the other way around if I don't, right?
No, there's no charge for you didn't destroy. What's their fee? I mean, like you didn't harm anything.
Right.
A trespass. I mean, if they press charges on a lady for trespassing, I mean, what kind of publicity is that? You know what I mean? Like you,
Yeah.
I mean, you can play that game. Like Jennifer, my client, the hot yoga teacher owner, she just sent out a video on her email to her 4,000 on her email list through her 2 studios, and she posted it on YouTube, and she sent it to all of the board members for the county of Yavapai and the city of Cottonwood that they're not doing their job right, and I started off representing her because it was her LLC, and an LLC has to be represented by an attorney. There's no way for it to come into court without an attorney. See, most people don't know that.
I did not know that.
Yeah, so if you stay as a sole proprietor, you can
Right.
represent yourself. As soon as you turn into an LLC, now if you go to court, you have to be represented by an attorney. An
Wow.
LLC cannot show up without an attorney.
Rude.
And people don't know that.
I know
it's
that.
like it's another one of those little loopholes that the attorneys.
Yeah.
And what is the first thing an attorney tells you to do when you go? Oh, you need to form an LLC to do business. It's the first thing they tell everybody, right?
Yes.
You see how that works?
Yes.
That's the stuff I'm talking about. It's so
Wow.
messed up.
Oh
Now,
my
if you
gosh.
show up as a trust, God's economy, as
Yeah.
a trust, you don't own anything, so you have no liability,
Right.
and you are a steward. And this comes back to when you came onto the land and you said,
Yeah.
well, you know, what am I doing? I'm stewarding the land. I'm helping set up trusts
Oh, I see.
for ownership. Not for ownership. Ownership's
Yeah.
that's one of those upside down terms
Right.
in our country. Nobody owns anything. You think you own it. That's
Yeah.
the upside downness. I mean,
Right.
the bank owns most of the real estate.
Right.
You know, people don't own their homes.
Right.
You don't own your car. You get a registration license number to drive it. See, like my car is not registered. So if a cop pulls me over and he says, "Can I see your license and registration?" I say, "No, this is not my car."
And that's it?
Well, I mean, it's a dance. Right? I mean, it's a dance. This is one of my theories on how I would do it. I mean, but also sitting in this, you know, it's 2019 since it was last been registered. I haven't had any issues. So, I mean, I do think that there's something to that energetically being aligned with your divine source that, and living as a sovereign
Mm-hmm.
in love, unconditional love, and no harm to your neighbor.
Right.
It just creates this bubble, 7-foot bubble, that you go through life. Not, you know, all these things that we're worried about don't really happen.
So interesting. So what I know that you were planning to put together some kind of a program. What is it that you want to share with people?
It's really this idea of like God's economy and being a trustee. As we sit under.
Okay, say that one more time.
Yeah.
Can
We're sitting under the-
can everyone listening tell that we're actually outdoors? Okay.
sitting under Nea's willow tree, and he's squawking at us. But yeah, so what I want to do is help people think about a new alignment and a new way to think about life, going through life as a steward and as operating in trust, because we never own anything anyway.
Mm-hmm.
The Creator created it, and we steward it for the next generation. And so that's the way his economy works, or her economy, whatever you want to call Source's economy.
Their economy.
The Creator. Yeah, right? And it just seems like that's energetically in alignment, in a high vibration with the earth,
Mm-hmm.
restoring the earth, healing people so that they stop destroying the earth, and all these things work together, right? We're stewards. We're stewards, not here to make a profit.
But how does that work just in terms of buying land or buying a home or whatever? How does that work? If you're, you know what I mean? Just
Well, so I think we're in a shifting of what we call land ownership. I think that's going away.
mm-hmm.
You know, and it's more about what do people steward. Like you steward some land, lay claim to it, and steward it.
How do you lay claim to it?
Well, it's back to the game, right? There's all different kinds of ways.
Right.
But like, for instance, we'll take my friend Morgan Langan over at Grace Grove, and what he has done is he's taken all debt off of the land and gone back to a land patent title, which is available here in this whole Oak Creek section, which allows you to lay claim to title that goes back before the creation of the state. So then you're not subject to all the
State laws.
chess rules. Exactly.
Wow.
And
Well,
so
that would take some real knowledge to
it
be able
does.
to
It
pull
does.
that off,
It
doesn't
does.
it?
It does.
Yeah.
But see, that's what I'll call 3D chess.
Right.
Right. It's not just the same. It's not the two-dimensional that the average person's going to want to deal with or
Right.
deal. But I mean, it's just a way. You know, other ways is like here. Like I showed up here, and I'm given an opportunity to steward these 12 acres here and the the 20 on the other side with Grace Grove and all of the Soak Creek, and I've met all these neighbors here, and they've become my clients, and I'm helping them put their land in trust. And it's just becoming like a little corridor here. It's 7 miles, so I think my 7-foot bubble is going to expand to 7 miles.
Right.
That's how your community grows, is the people I can touch, see, and feel, right?
Right.
Like, we can really become solid here and know who, all the resources we need are here.
So I have a quick question. You said at the very beginning that you're thinking about giving up your law license, right? But wouldn't you need to keep that to do this kind of thing, or is this something you can do without a regular law license?
So that goes back to trusteeship.
Okay.
A trustee, in my opinion, is the strongest position anybody can have when they enter into commerce of any sort. And it's because you're showing up as a steward. So you're defending somebody else's ownership, somebody else's benefit, right? The beneficial interests of that trust. But the trustee is never, they're immune. You don't have any assets. They don't sue you for those. You have full authority, and it's all done in private agreement. So you don't have to disclose any of it. And these private agreements are not allowed to be used in court.
Interesting.
So you can't be dragged into court with them.
Wow.
Right?
So they can't take your property or your home or anything from you because it's all.
It's a trust,
right?
Yeah, it's a trust. It's in trust.
Right.
They don't know who the players are.
Interesting.
That's how a trustee shows up. And that's how the big banks, this is what they've been doing for years. This is how all the Rockefellers, all the wealthy people, you've always heard, they do all this stuff in trust. Yeah, well, the secret's out. It's not a secret. It's that's how it goes, and nobody knows.
Wow, that's something. So for what do you feel is the most beneficial for people who would be listening to this, for instance? What are the most beneficial things that people need to know in general?
Well, it's this understanding of that we don't own anything, and that all we are here to do is steward for somebody else. And when we start thinking in those terms, our whole life changes. Like, everything changes, because it takes the focus off of trying to hold on to everything. We don't, and all of a sudden you see that everything around you becomes available to you at the same time, right?
So when you say steward for somebody else, what does that mean? So you're talking about someone who owns a property, or what do you mean by stewarding for someone else?
Well, the concept, I was talking to a guy last week who's in Costa Rica, and he was sharing with me, because we bounce ideas off each other on these trusts and different ways to have them structured, right? And he's sharing with me that he just created a trust where the earth is the beneficiary. So once this trust is formed, it's always going to remain its highest and best use, right?
Wow.
And so, and that, I believe, is going to be a more common way for people to steward land. So you're not, and you can make other people beneficiaries as well. Like, you could have, a family member be a beneficiary with the earth, but then you better teach them about trusts and what it means.
The earth.
Exactly, and that's what Trustee University or the Trustee Academy is going to be.
Is that what you're
doing with my daughter?
Okay, it's called Trustee Academy. Is what
yeah. Well, we're still debating on the name. I think she's got a. Yeah, but I wanted it to be Trustee University, but university has a negative connotation. So anyway, we're coming up with a name for it.
Okay, so just a quick note to everybody listening. Go check in the description box, and if it's not available right now, the information that you might be looking for, just check back, because Bradley's going to have a website up really soon and things like that. So just go there for contact information. But anyhow, go ahead. Let me ask one quick question. So, my daughter and I rent a condo. So, for people who rent, how does that work for them? Or is it not? Do they not qualify because they're renters?
Well, I mean, how does what work? What do you
Well,
mean,
the
like-
idea of stewardship and stuff like that, you can't really do that if you're renting something.
Well,
Would
you
that
can
be correct?
you can be the best tenant or renter that's ever been in that property, right? And be an amazing steward,
Right.
and just see if there isn't some magic that comes from that.
Yeah, well, that we do. We're really
Yeah.
good at that.
Yeah, and that's how, this whole mindset of living in that way starts to grow. And when you do that, I mean, you never know.
Right?
You never know.
So your idea is that if someone, quote, owns their home and their property, they could then make it into a trust and do what you're talking about, and they steward the land that they already own. Is that right?
Well, yeah. I mean, again, they don't probably own it. Most people don't own the
Right.
land, but yeah. But
what would we think of as
yes,
owners?
right,
Like
right,
I own this
right.
home, right? Yeah.
And so now you rightfully title it, in my opinion,
Yeah.
and you put it into trust.
And then nobody
Because
can
that's
say
what the
you
bank
didn't-
does.
right? And
The
then no
bank-
one could say, well, you didn't pay enough of taxes or whatever, and take something away from you because they can't touch it anymore, right?
Well, see, that's what we're testing right now with Morgan and the case that's going on. It's one of the items that's being tested in the case that's going on in the county of Yavapai, which is he has not paid the property tax on it, and they're saying that he still owes property tax on it. And they recorded some deeds incorrectly and split his parcels.
Oh, interesting.
And it's like they're just doing what they feel
Yeah,
like they
they're
want to
just playing
do,
the
and he's
game.
just saying that's not going to work.
Yep.
And so somebody came along and bought one of the notes. You know how tax lien, have you ever heard of
Yeah.
that? Like people buy tax liens
Oh,
on
no.
property, and then they can come and they can foreclose on
Oh,
your
I
property.
didn't- right?
And we're in a non-judicial foreclosure state. Arizona is non-judicial foreclosure, which means that all the bank has to do is say, "Oh, he messed up. I'm foreclosing." Doesn't have to go in front of a judge.
Wow.
I mean, it's just all paperwork behind the scenes, and
Wow.
so it's a nightmare, and
Yeah.
it's not right, and you don't get a day in court, and that's what happened over here. That's why they got removed at gunpoint.
Yeah, that was a few years ago.
That was a
right?
few years back,
Yeah.
but they ultimately won that and showed that it was based upon fraudulent documents and it was made up records and all this crazy stuff. But he still had to go through it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's where it gets tricky. A lot of
Right.
people don't have the Constitution.
Right.
To
So
stand
we're
out.
at the very beginning of all this kind of thing, so that's why it's a little harder right now, because there's not a lot to, I don't know the word for it. But
Well, like in the legal system, they call precedent.
yes, that's what I was looking
Yeah,
for.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. And the only way it's going to happen is for more and more of us to stand up in our sovereign right and claim our sovereign rights and not go along with their program. And that's how it's got to go.
So if someone was going to buy property, what would you suggest to them in terms of what you're talking about right now? If they're going to buy a new place, then how does that work?
Well, they would get the title put in the proper name. It's all about how you hold title is the magic in this. If you're playing in that system in the 3D world where
Sure.
you're looking at maps and the chain of title at the escrow company, right? And the reason why that's so important, right? It comes back to licenses. It's so that the title companies can make their fees off of all these transactions.
Mm-hmm.
And all they do it for is so that a lender will lend money. I mean, it's got clean title.
Right.
Well, I think that's going to start to go away because lenders, we know, are kind of crooked.
Yeah.
Is that a fair way to say that?
I think so.
I mean,
Like
I think
the whole
it's
banking system?
I mean, it's more than that, right? I mean,
Right.
it's like an evil empire. But the point is, like, it's going to go away,
Yeah.
and it's going to be more, in my opinion, you're stewarding the land. So who's occupying the land, right? So we got all these mega mansions going up in other parts of the world, and all
Yeah.
these magical places, and
Right.
and the common people and the families that have lived there for years and
Yeah.
grown up in the areas can't afford to be there anymore and
Right.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
While these houses sit empty for 50 weeks out of a year,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to keep going like that.
That's so great. I'm so glad to hear that.
I think it's going to be like, people are going to say, you know what? I'm going to move in this house for those 48 or something.
Right.
I mean, I don't know exactly how it's going to go, but you know what I'm saying? Like,
no,
you
I
can't
do.
just like buy land
and then just keep it all for yourself.
Because that's what a bunch of all the wealthy guys are doing now, right? Like,
yep. Oh yeah. Well, and they're really
Jobs,
buying. Yep.
or not Jobs. He's dead. The other one.
Bezos.
No, the computer guy.
Gates. Yeah.
All those guys. Yeah. They're just buying up gigantic swaths of land everywhere.
Yeah. Okay, this is totally off topic, but I have to throw this in about Bill Gates. I saw something about a year ago, and I used to live in Utah, and so they're really big on who's related to who, and so they have this thing called Ancestry.com.
Yeah.
And I saw Bill and Melinda Gates died in 2013. Did you know that? Seriously. And they have it all laid out on Ancestry.com. And then I did a little more research, and it turned out, now they don't tell you this on Ancestry.com. They just say they died. They don't tell you what happened. But what I found out was, and I don't know, I can't prove it, but I think it makes a lot of sense, that they were in India, and they went to one of these towns where they had forcibly vaccinated, especially young girls, and a lot of injuries and deaths. And this little village surrounded them and strung them up from a tree.
Wait, back in 14?
No, 2013.
In 2013?
Yeah. If you look at,
that's a great story. I mean, whether it's true or not, I just love it.
I do too. That's why I thought I'd throw it in. But if you look at a picture of Melinda Gates prior to 2013, and you look at her now, I mean, she looks like a man to me, without a doubt. She looks like a transgendered man.
I've been hearing all kinds of...
But look at those two pictures. You're going to go, this is not the same person.
Yeah, I know.
Anyhow, totally off topic.
No, it all fits together.
It does. Well, I threw that in
serious.
too, because it's like people standing up for themselves and saying, no, it's going to stop. So, but even, okay, here's another thing I have to throw in about Bill Gates. So I was reading about, quote Bill Gates, if that's whoever he is,
right?
But I was reading about him buying up all this farmland, right? But what's really interesting is that the farmland is all like GMO land, because it has to do with being subsidized by the government, and that's all corn, basically, right? And so now people are getting all upset because they're getting paid to destroy their crops. But I'm going, that's interesting, because you're getting paid to destroy GMO crops, which is what feeds the cattle and a lot of people, depending what kind of corn they're growing. But I thought, this is really interesting what's going on. I don't think it's what it appears to be at all. I feel like it's something completely different going on. So maybe they're going to go back to organic farming. Who knows?
Yeah.
Right?
I'm waiting. I'll be waiting for
Wouldn't
that
be
one.
cool if they were destroying the crops because they're going to bring organic in? Like, yeah, I love that. That's just my, that's my hopeful thinking, but I think that would be cool.
That's really optimistic there.
Well, it's possible, don't you think? I mean, anything's possible.
Yes. Yeah. I'm not going to hold my breath for Bill Gates growing true organic food that's good for us.
Oh, I don't know. Like, I have another philosophy around that, but that's just my, theory that it's going to all start to do more what you're talking about, where people are not going to be able to own like that anymore.
That's right.
And so it won't be what is Bill Gates going to do?
That's exactly right.
It's all going to get turned over.
Now there's the silver lining.
That's what I mean.
Yes,
That's what I think is coming. And I think
like
that then the people who are going to get to steward that land are going to be organic growers.
That's what's going to happen.
Like heal the land. I think that's what's coming.
And who's going to kick them out, right?
Right.
I mean, like when people are seriously stewarding the land at its highest potential and making something good for the community, they're going to be the ones who control the land.
Yeah.
That's how I
love that idea. I think that's awesome.
And that's what I mean by a shifting change in ownership. And that should all be done in a trust.
Got it.
And those people, depending upon their life circumstances, if they have licenses, they may not want to be a public trustee. They may want to be a private trustee. If they have assets or perceived assets, and so now they can go anonymously into the distance and still operate through as a trustee, but a private trustee. And then they can have a public trustee who might show up to conduct business that needs to be done with, pen and paper and signing into, like if, I don't know what, if you're going to build something on the land, if you're a good trustee and you're doing it all right, you probably don't need to go get permits, but
interesting.
That's a whole nother story.
Oh, this sounds so exciting. And I feel like, how far do you think this is down the line?
No, it's happening.
It's happening right
this
now.
Is what, yeah.
Cool.
This is how Grace Grove operates. This
Right.
is how I'm helping other clients. But I mean, it's just now unfolding.
Yeah,
It's not like
yeah.
we got.
Right.
But it's the same way that it's been being done by the wealthy and the banks and all that. It's not new. It's just with me doing what
Right.
I'm doing. This
Right.
it's new for me at
Right.
this level.
Right.
Let's put it that way.
Right. Oh,
Right.
this is awesome. Well, is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap this up?
Well, no, just I just give gratitude for being alive every day in
Yeah.
such a magnificent place and sitting here with a lovely lady. And
Oh, thank you.
I'm so grateful and thankful to be alive and doing what we're doing and helping people think about God's economy and steward and operate and trust. I'm excited for the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years,
Yeah.
100 years.
Very exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't wait to see we've just been waiting, but one of the things I want to just throw in that I've learned in this last year or so is that a lot of people have been anticipating things. When's this going to happen? When's that going to happen? And the thing I've learned, which I knew before, but now I really get it, is that this is really all about being present right now. It's like being fully present because you really cannot predict anything. And so, and I have to tell you something you don't know. This is really, you thought I was off topic before. This is way off topic. But a few days ago, it was my birthday, and my daughter and I were driving. Thank you. And we were driving home, and it was 8:30, so it was pitch black here in Arizona by 8:30. And we were coming into the village of Oak Creek, which is, for people who don't know what that is, it's part of Sedona, but it's sort of the first place you come to at the very south part of Highway 179, I think.
And
anyhow,
it's so beautiful.
It's so beautiful.
Oh.
Well, so we're coming, you come around this corner and you don't see anything, and then all of a sudden you see everything, and there's the town and everything. But we come down the hill and we saw all these UFO crafts, and I mean hundreds. Oh, look, right there's a picture, or maybe even thousands.
Like we did the other when we.
No. They were just glittering like little tiny stars. You can't tell from the picture,
Right.
but they were like these. It looked like tiny stars, but it was moving in formation, and then this whole formation.
Slowly?
Well, at first it was slow, and then it started picking up speed, and it I don't even know how to describe it. It was like maybe moving across the sky so fast that it couldn't have been. Now, this is the first one we saw. It was going horizontally across the sky, right? The whole formation. And we saw it, and we're like, oh my gosh, we got to get a picture. But there were cars coming toward us with lights, and we couldn't get a picture.
Right.
And then it just disappeared. And Amelia's like, oh man, how could they do that? I needed to be able to get a picture. So the next night, through a whole series of weird coincidences and synchronicities, we end up on the same place at 9:30, and I just happened to look up at the sky. I didn't even have my glasses on, and I saw the same formation, but now it's moving at a completely different angle.
What area? Just out by the village?
Just before you come into the village, there's like a hill you come down.
Yeah.
Right? It's right there. We're coming down that hill. And we actually, Amelia was driving, she pulled into a private property, and we jump out to get pictures, and we had to switch our phones because we had the wrong phones. Somehow she had the presence of mind to do it with night vision, like the night, and that was the picture she got.
Wow.
Yeah, and so,
Wow.
but that literally, if you could have seen that, you would know that it was so far out that it was, I would say, I wouldn't be surprised if it was thousands of UFOs in formation, moving in formation, in formation across the sky.
You can see
right?
tree right there. If you see the tree,
Yeah,
they put
yeah.
contrast.
So you can get an idea how far that was.
Uh-huh.
So the whole thing is moving
in
in formation. So there was they weren't like all over.
And
Usually
could you see them like go out a
Individually.
distance, or did they just disappear?
they just disappeared.
See, that's
boom, like that. It was
They,
really
like
fast.
they go through a hole, right?
That must, well, either they went through a hole or they just shifted dimensions. Because they can just shift into another dimension. They're still there, but we can't see them.
So what do you think they're doing?
Oh, that's such a good question. We're going to have to, we have a psychic friend that we're going to talk about this with, see what she says. She's great. Her name is Victoria. We've done some talks on YouTube as well. So we're going to have a chat with her on Thursday about what's really going on.
One of the best theories I heard is that they're repairing the grid. They're working on all those light beings are working on the repair of the grid around this energy, whatever we are, whatever this is that we're on.
So you mean the grid? So there's a grid above Earth you're talking about, right? So it's
Electromagnetic grid of
Yes.
some sort.
yeah, like they're trying to stop. Well, okay, you tell me. What do you think the repair is?
I don't know much more than that. I just think that resonates, and I
Yeah.
liked it. I mean,
Yeah, right.
but a little add-on would be that grid somehow interacts with our vessel, and as it's being repaired, it's repairing
Ooh,
our vessels
Interesting.
for the light workers down here
right.
to continue doing the stewardship and trustee work that needs to be done.
Right. Well, I have never seen anything like that, and I've seen UFOs over the years many times. And it's really funny because I've actually pulled off of a highway when I saw 5 of them, and they were just kind of bouncing around. And then all of a sudden, one. Have you ever seen this where one splits into 2? Have you ever seen that?
I've seen, no, not. I mean, maybe now that you say that, I didn't realize. Just recently, I saw a little group of lights bouncing around like that, and then I thought another one appeared, but it could have maybe been splitting into 2. I don't know.
I mean, well, that's what it looked like. It was just like it looked like
But I've
one,
been
and then all of a
seeing-
sudden it just went, and it went into 2, and I'm like, what? So, but I mean, that's the most I've ever seen is 5, and they were right up close. I could see them very clearly, but I've never seen a whole formation. So the fact that they're showing us that, and
but
nobody
did
can.
you saw him that night at Grace Grove, right?
I didn't.
Yes,
You
we
did,
did.
didn't you?
We did.
Amelia did.
Yes, we
Yeah.
all did. It was different though. So I heard supposedly it was Elon's Musk.
No,
Yeah.
that's it.
Come on,
I'm not
no.
buying that
No
for a
Elon
second.
Musk
I
stuff.
know.
No.
I'm like, whatever.
Yeah.
No, but I did see it that night when they were going. So it was bigger than
Talk
that.
really loud,
Yeah.
honey, so they can hear you.
Oh, okay, it was bigger than that. So it's like, okay, you know how ants, when they're walking, they're in formation and they're moving in a flow? It was like that. They were in a formation, just moved in this one flow. And they were there 1 second, and then they were gone the next.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But it was like, it almost looked like a big oblong, it was such a strange, when we say formation, there was nobody outside of that. You see how that line was? There was nothing outside of that line.
Yeah.
It was like
They were right,
exact.
right.
And the whole line was moving together. And it's like, nobody can say, oh yeah, that was a weather balloon. No, I don't think so. So they're actually showing up, I would say, intentionally for us, don't you think? Because
Yes.
they've never had to show
Well,
up.
and this is interesting tidbit, but Forrest, who you met, do you
Yeah,
remember?
yeah.
Sydney's new love. His uncle, I think it is in the military in the division that deals with unidentified flying objects, right?
Interesting.
And he has been telling him that in June of this year, he started telling him this about 6 months ago. The government's going to release all their records about the stuff they've been hiding.
Interesting. Well, and I kind of wonder, I've heard about that too, and I've been wondering about that leading into Project Bluebeam. Do you know about that?
No, please share.
Now we're going really off topic. Okay, well, Project Bluebeam, I think if people just looked it up, they'd find, and of course it's got, everything that we talk about is going to go, conspiracy theory, but Boy, I've been paying attention to this for an awfully long time, and basically the idea is that that the powers that were, I guess you could say, want to kind of get people riled up with the appearance of, I don't know, whatever, UFOs or something. You have to just go look it up.
Yeah.
But it requires a little bit of soft disclosure to pull it off, right? So that if no one admits it's real, then they're going to go, well, that's a hologram, which it is. It's actually Project Bluebeam is something that's done all through holograms. And so it will appear that stuff's going on in the sky, and for people who are, believers in certain religious documents or whatever. I don't really know that much about it yet, but I that is what I've heard, is that that's part of this soft disclosure, which they've been doing for a little while now. There's little bits and pieces that have been coming out through the military and through the Pentagon. So, but it'll be interesting to see what comes of that. I'm fascinated with all of it. But yeah, for this to suddenly be showing up now, and we've lived in Sedona for 14 years, and I've seen UFOs. Like I saw one with a telescope one time, and it looked like it was flashing red, yellow, blue, green, but actually there were lights on the bottom of it, so it was round, and it was going around. So the first set of lights was red, then yellow, then blue, then green, and it was going in circles around the base. Huh. So, but those I've heard were actually, built here based on, UFO technology that they found, that they've actually built that kind of stuff. But when we saw all these UFOs, I'm like,
no way.
That is not from us.
I mean,
that is definitely from someplace else.
But do you think could it have been a hologram?
No. Because here's the thing: if they did a hologram, they would be doing it to get people to see it, and this was like, you had to be in the exact right place at the right time and see it, and then it was gone. It was so fast, but I haven't heard anybody else talk about it. I got
a friend of mine. What day was it on?
It was on May 27th and May 28th.
Because a friend of mine texted me, right there, actually, there he is. Dude, I just saw the lights in the sky, Saturday, 9/28.
Okay, so we saw it on Thursday and Friday. So he saw it on Saturday. Oh, look, and we saw it at 9:30. So he says 9:28.
Yeah, it was 9:30.
Interesting. We're going to have to keep our eyes peeled.
Yeah.
Because first it was 8:30,
I
then
had
9:30.
told him he didn't see him, and I was telling him, he was my yoga teacher.
Yeah.
And he's friends with Grace Grove and stuff. But I had told him about the lights that we all saw that night.
Uh-huh.
And then he saw them. I mean, again, I guess they're even more intense. But
yeah.
I mean, and I've seen them 3 times now.
Cool.
The most intense.
There's definitely fun things going on.
Yeah, there's something going on. And I also see these other ones that are like clusters. That are like blinking. They're red, and they move like almost like a drone. I mean, it's like super fast.
Yeah.
But it can't be a drone.
No.
I mean, it's just they're way so fast.
Yeah, too fast. I've seen those too.
Yeah.
And that's how and they kind of bounce around and defy gravity and laws of everything.
And then they'll go into warp speed, and then I actually saw
one
years
What's
ago.
going on out there? I want to know.
Right? Well, I actually saw one years ago where it took off. You could see it really clear in the bright lights and everything, and then it took off and it left behind a rainbow-colored stream, like a trail.
Oh.
But the thing that was interesting, so that was just like, what they have in the movies, right? That rainbow. So it's real. It's actually a real thing. But then it disappears in seconds. It's not like a regular plane where it takes a long time to dissipate. It's just like in a few seconds, and it's just gone, like it was never there. So
amazing.
Yeah, it's great to live in Sedona, I have to say.
Yeah.
We just see the coolest things.
And how many years you been here?
14. But this
awesome.
thing I was telling you about actually happened in 1990 when I saw that one take off and the rainbow trail behind it. That was back before everything was, made into national park. I mean, it's a national park, but you could just go there and you could just camp out and just do what you wanted to do. So I kind of miss those days.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, well, they'll come back.
In your divine stewardship.
Yeah,
as a divine steward, I claim those rights sometimes, like.
Yeah.
I would tell any Forest Service guy that I'm pretty sure I'm taking as good care of the land as you are. And
Yeah.
I've got a right to be on this just as much as you do.
I think that's great. I'm excited to see how this is all going to unfold.
Yeah.
Well, Bradley, thank you so much for chatting with me and for chatting with our audience. And we will definitely have to do this again sometime when we have more exciting things to report back.
I'd be delighted.
Okay.
I can't wait. Yeah, it sounds like we're going to be talking about some lights in the sky
Right?
here over the next month or so. I feel that.
I know. Very
It's been-
exciting.
It's been gaining momentum.
I think so. Well, thank you everybody for listening. This is Heather Noël at thegivinggamefoundation.com. And again, check down in the description area for more interesting updates with Bradley Logan. Thanks again. Bye.